Rain slammed against the glass walls of Kael Jin's penthouse like bullets. Amara stood in the private kitchen at midnight, hands trembling as she stirred porridge for a man who had never once asked her name in 4 months. The billionaire who controlled half of Seoul's underground economy sat 15 feet away in silence, scrolling through acquisition reports on his tablet. She had mistaken proximity for intimacy. She had believed that being allowed into his fortress meant she mattered. But tonight, watching him ignore her existence while she cooked his meal, Amara finally understood the truth. She wasn't a partner or even a person to him. She was furniture. And for the first time in her life, she decided furniture could walk away. Want to see what happens when the invisible woman finally makes the most powerful man in the city actually see her? Stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Bomb. The porridge burned. Amara Vale stared at the expensive copper pot on the induction stove, watching steam curl upward in lazy spirals while the bottom layer of rice turned brown and bitter. She should have stirred it 3 minutes ago. She should have added the chicken stock earlier. She should have cared. But she didn't. Behind her, beyond the kitchen island's polished marble surface, Kael Jin sat in his usual position at the glass dining table. Black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, tablet propped against a crystal water glass. His face held the same expression it always did, cold, focused, unreachable, like a statue carved from ice and expensive cologne. 4 months ago, that face had terrified her. Now it just made her tired. Amara turned off the burner and grabbed the pot with a kitchen towel, carrying it to the sink. The metal hissed when it touched the wet basin. She dumped the ruined porridge down the disposal without looking back at the table. "What are you doing?" Kyle's voice cut across the kitchen. Flat, not curious, just registering an irregularity in his environment. Amara didn't answer. She rinsed the pot under scalding water, watching grains of rice swirl down the drain. Her hands were red from the heat, but she didn't pull away. "Amara." She dried the pot slowly, methodically. Then she set it on the counter and turned to face him. Kael hadn't moved. The tablet still glowed in front of him, casting blue light across his sharp features. He was beautiful in the way expensive things were beautiful. Perfect lines, flawless construction, completely hollow. "I burned it," Amara said. His dark eyes flicked up to meet hers. For exactly 2 seconds, then back to the screen. "Make another batch." Not a request. A command. Amara felt something crack inside her chest. Something that had been bending for months, taking the weight of his indifference, finally snapping clean through. "No." The single word hung in the air between them like smoke. Kael's fingers stopped moving across the tablet screen. He looked up again, and this time his gaze stayed fixed on her. The temperature in the kitchen seemed to drop 5 degrees. "What did you say?" Amara crossed her arms over her chest. She was wearing the same plain white button-down shirt and black pants she wore every day. The same pulled-back bun. The same invisible uniform for the invisible woman who kept his fortress running. "I said no." Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "It's 1 a.m. You didn't ask for porridge. You didn't ask for anything. I made it because that's what I do every Tuesday night, but I'm done pretending you notice." Kael set the tablet down flat on the table, slowly, deliberately. When he stood, his 6-foot frame unfolded with the kind of controlled grace that made boardroom opponents nervous. He walked toward the kitchen island. Amara's heart kicked against her ribs, but she held her ground. She had seen him destroy corporate rivals with nothing but silence and a well-timed stare. She had watched him end entire careers with a single phone call, but she had also watched him eat her cooking for 4 months without once saying thank you. Fear and exhaustion were fighting inside her chest, and exhaustion was winning. Kael stopped on the opposite side of the marble island, close enough that she could smell his aftershave. Bergamot and something darker, cedar maybe. He studied her with the same analytical precision he used on financial statements. "You're upset," he said finally. Not a question, an observation. Amara laughed. The sound came out harsh and ugly in the pristine kitchen. "I'm not upset, Mr. Jin. I'm just tired of being invisible." "You're not invisible." "Really?" She gestured around the penthouse. "When's my birthday?" Kael's expression didn't change. "What's my favorite color?" Amara continued. "Where did I grow up?" Do I have family? Have you ever asked me a single personal question in 4 months? Silence. That's what I thought. Amara turned back to the sink and started washing the pot again, even though it was already clean. She needed something to do with her hands before she threw it at his perfect face. You're here to manage the household, Kael said behind her, not to be my confidant. I know what I'm here for. Amara scrubbed harder at the already spotless copper. I just forgot for a while that proximity doesn't mean anything. You let me into your space because you need someone to make midnight porridge and arrange your dry cleaning, not because I matter. If you're dissatisfied with the arrangement, we can discuss adjusted compensation. Amara's hand stilled on the pot. She set it down carefully in the drying rack and turned around. Kael was watching her with that same neutral expression, the one that gave nothing away, the one that made him dangerous in negotiations. You think this is about money? Most things are. Jesus Christ. Amara pulled the towel from her shoulder and threw it on the counter. I don't want more money, Mr. Jin. I want to feel like a human being instead of a piece of furniture that makes porridge. Something flickered across Kael's face, too fast to read. Then it was gone, replaced by the familiar ice. If you want to terminate your employment, I'll have my assistant process the paperwork tomorrow. Of course you will. Amara felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. Not when he was looking at her like she was a minor inconvenience in his perfectly controlled world. That's your solution to everything, isn't it? Someone doesn't fit in your empire exactly the way you want them to, so you just remove them. Clean, efficient, done. Kael's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I don't know what you expected from this arrangement, Miss Vale. I expected nothing, Amara said quietly. And that's exactly what I got. She walked past him toward the private elevator that led down to the staff quarters on the 47th floor. Her footsteps echoed too loud on the Italian tile. Behind her, she heard Kael move, but she didn't turn around. Where are you going? To bed. Amara jabbed the elevator button. Your midnight porridge will have to wait until someone who doesn't mind being invisible makes it for you. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Amara stepped inside and finally turned to face him. Kael stood in the middle of his pristine penthouse, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a city he practically owned. Rain still hammered against the glass. Lightning flickered somewhere over the harbor, throwing shadows across his face. For just a second, he looked almost human. Then the elevator doors closed, and he disappeared. The staff quarters were nothing like the penthouse. Amara's room was small and functional, a twin bed, a narrow desk, a closet barely big enough for her clothes. The window overlooked an alley instead of the city's skyline. But it was hers, the only space in the entire Shinra Tower that belonged to her instead of Kael Jin. She sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. Not because she loved him. She wasn't stupid enough to fall in love with a man who treated her like high-end appliances. But because she had started to believe that maybe, eventually, he would notice her. That all those quiet dinners and carefully prepared meals would add up to something that looked like recognition. Instead, she had wasted 4 months being a ghost in a glass tower. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Amara wiped her eyes and checked the screen. A text from Maya, her friend who worked in graphic design 6 floors down. Coffee tomorrow morning? You look like you need it. Amara smiled despite herself. Maya had dragged her to lunch during her second week at Shinra Tower, claiming that anyone who looked that lost needed a friend immediately. She had been right. Definitely, Amara typed back. 8 a.m.? Perfect. Bring drama. I live for it. Amara set the phone down and changed into an oversized t-shirt and sleep shorts. Through the thin walls, she could hear her neighbor's television playing some late-night drama. Normal sounds from normal people living normal lives. She climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, she would start looking for a new job. Something with regular hours and a boss who didn't make her feel like she was slowly disappearing. Something that didn't require pretending she was fine with being treated like expensive furniture. Tomorrow, she would remember that she deserved better than Kael Jin's indifference. But tonight, she let herself feel the weight of 4 months spent hoping for something that was never going to happen. Mak. Amara woke up to 17 missed calls. She grabbed her phone off the nightstand, squinting at the bright screen in the dark room. All 17 calls were from the penthouse landline. The call log showed they had started at 3:47 a.m. and continued every 8 minutes until 6:23 a.m. It was now 6:30. Her phone rang again. Same number. Amara let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, her work email chimed. Then again. Then 3 more times in rapid succession. She opened the email app with a growing sense of dread. All 5 emails were from Kael's executive assistant, Christine Park. The subject lines escalated in urgency. Urgent. Mr. Jin requires your immediate assistance. Urgent. Please respond. ASAP. Urgent. Mr. Jin is asking for you specifically. Critical. Call the penthouse immediately. Emergency. This is time sensitive. Amara sat up in bed, her heart pounding. The last email had been sent 4 minutes ago. She opened it with shaking fingers. Miss Vale, Mr. Jin has been trying to reach you for over 2 hours. He's insisting on speaking with you personally before his 7 a.m. meeting with the European Investment Consortium. Please call the penthouse line immediately or report to the 50th floor. This is extremely urgent. Christina Amara stared at the screen. Kael Jin didn't do urgent. He did cold and controlled and methodical. He planned everything 6 moves ahead and never showed cracks in his armor. Something was wrong. She called the penthouse line. Kael answered on the first ring. Where are you? His voice sounded different, rougher, like he hadn't slept. In my room, Amara said carefully. What's wrong? I need you upstairs. Mr. Jin, it's 6:30 in the morning. Your meeting isn't for another 30 minutes. Christine can handle. I don't want Christine. The words came out sharp, almost desperate. I need you, now. Amara's grip tightened on the phone. Why? Silence stretched across the line. She could hear him breathing. Please, Kael said finally. The word hit her like a physical blow. In 4 months, she had never heard him say please. Not once. I'll be there in 10 minutes, Amara heard herself say. She hung up before he could respond. The private elevator to the penthouse required a key card that only 3 people in the building possessed, Kael, Christine, and Amara. She swiped hers through the reader with trembling hands and watched the numbers climb. 47, 48, 49, 50. The doors opened directly into the penthouse living room. Kael was standing by the windows, backlit by the gray dawn. He had changed into a fresh suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, but his hair looked wrong, still wet from the shower but uncombed, like he had gotten dressed in a hurry. When he turned to face her, Amara's breath caught. He looked wrecked. His eyes were bloodshot and shadowed with exhaustion. His tie hung unknotted around his collar, and his hands were shaking. What happened? Amara stepped out of the elevator, all her anger from the night before temporarily forgotten. Are you hurt? No. Kael's voice came out hoarse. I'm fine. You're not fine. Amara crossed the room toward him. You look like you haven't slept in days. Should I call a doctor? I don't need a doctor. Kael ran a hand through his damp hair, making it worse. I need you to tell me how to fix this. Fix what? Last night. He was looking at her with an intensity that made her want to step back. What you said, about being invisible. Amara stared at him. You called me up here at 6:30 in the morning to talk about last night? I tried calling at 3:47, but you didn't answer. Because normal people sleep at 3:47 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. Kael's jaw clenched. I kept thinking about what you said, that I treat you like furniture, that I don't notice you, and I realized you're right. The admission hung between them like something fragile. Amara didn't know what to do with it. Mr. Jin, Kael. He said it urgently, desperately. My name is Kael, and I don't know your birthday or your favorite color or where you grew up, but I want to know. I need to know. Why? The question came out harsher than she intended. Why does it suddenly matter now? Because I finally stood up to you? Because I stopped being the perfect silent employee who does everything you want without questioning it? Because I can't stop thinking about you leaving. Kael took a step toward her. I've been sitting in this penthouse for the last 3 hours trying to figure out when you became essential instead of just convenient. And I can't pinpoint the moment. It just happened. Amara's heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. You don't even know me. I know you make barley tea without being asked because you noticed I drink it after difficult negotiations. I know you leave the kitchen window cracked open exactly 4 inches because you think the penthouse needs fresh air. I know you rearrange the books on my shelf by color instead of title because you think it looks better. Kael's voice dropped lower. I know you hum when you cook, that you touch your left earring when you're nervous, that you take your coffee black with exactly half a teaspoon of sugar. Amara felt tears burning behind her eyes again. Those are just details. They're the only details I have. Kael's hands clenched into fists at his sides, and I'm terrified they won't be enough to make you stay. Why? Amara whispered. Why do you care if I stay? Because this place feels empty without you in it. The confession broke something open between them, something that had been building for 4 months beneath all the silence and careful distance. Amara wanted to believe him. Every cell in her body wanted to believe that Kael Jin, the terrifying billionaire who controlled half of Seoul's economy, actually saw her as more than convenient help. But 4 months of invisibility had taught her to protect herself. I can't do this, she said quietly. I can't be the person you suddenly decide to notice just because I threatened to leave. That's not fair. I know it's not fair, and Kael's voice cracked slightly. But I'm asking anyway. Why should I believe you? Amara felt the tears finally spill over. How do I know this isn't just you trying to keep things convenient? That tomorrow you won't go back to treating me like I don't exist? Kael closed the distance between them in 2 strides. Before Amara could react, he took her face in both hands and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and messy and tasted like fear. His hand shook against her skin and his breath came harsh and uneven when he finally pulled back. Does that feel convenient to you? Kael's voice was raw. I'm terrified, Amara. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to let someone matter, but you do. And I can't watch you walk away without trying. Amara stared up at him, her whole world tilting sideways. 4 months ago, she had walked into this penthouse expecting nothing. Now Kael Jin was looking at her like she was the only solid thing in his entire empire, and she had absolutely no idea what to do with that. Before she could answer, Kael's phone buzzed violently against the glass table behind them. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Your meeting, Amara said, her voice shaking. I don't care about the meeting. Kael. She pulled back gently, putting space between them even though her body was screaming at her to stay close. You have 7 European investors waiting for you downstairs. You can't just skip it because we're having a moment. Watch me. No. Amara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Go to your meeting. We can talk about this later when we're both thinking clearly. Kael looked like he wanted to argue. His hands flexed at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her again. Promise me you'll be here when I get back, he said finally. Promise me, Amara. She should have said no. She should have used this moment to pack her things and disappear before everything got more complicated. But when she looked into Kael's bloodshot eyes, she saw something she had never seen before in 4 months of living in his fortress. She saw fear. Real, honest, human fear that she might actually leave. I promise, Amara whispered. Kael's entire body seemed to relax. He closed his eyes briefly, like she had just handed him something precious. Then he straightened his tie, smoothed his hair back with shaking hands, and walked toward the elevator without looking back. The doors closed behind him. Amara stood alone in the silent penthouse, her lips still burning from his kiss, her heart hammering against her ribs. What the hell had she just agreed to? What? The meeting ran 3 hours over schedule. Amara spent the entire time pacing the penthouse like a caged animal. She cleaned the kitchen twice, reorganized the spice rack, made barley tea and poured it down the sink when her hands shook too hard to hold the cup steady. Her phone buzzed. Maya. You never showed up for coffee. Did you die? Amara stared at the text. Coffee? She had completely forgotten about meeting Maya this morning. Sorry. Something came up with work. Rain check? Maya. Work or work? I don't want to talk about it. Maya. That means it's definitely work. Spill. Amara hesitated, then typed, Kael kissed me. Her phone immediately started ringing. What? Maya's voice practically shattered the speaker. Kael Jin? Ice King of Shinra Tower? That Kael? Yes. When? How? Why? Give me everything immediately. Amara collapsed onto the leather sofa and told her everything. The burned porridge, the fight, the 17 missed calls, the desperate confession, the kiss. Maya was silent for a long moment after she finished. Amara, she said finally, I love you. So I'm going to say this with all the love in my heart. Be very, very careful. I know. No, I don't think you do. Maya's voice was serious now. Kael Jin is not a normal guy. He's not even a normal rich guy. He's the kind of powerful that makes people disappear when they become inconvenient. And you're telling me he just suddenly realized you exist after 4 months of treating you like wallpaper? That feels like a trap. It does, Amara admitted. But Maya, you should have seen him. He looked terrified. Rich men don't get terrified. They get strategic. This didn't feel strategic. It felt real. Maya sighed. Okay, but promise me you won't make any big decisions until we've talked this through properly, preferably with alcohol. I promise. And Amara? Yeah? If he hurts you, I don't care how powerful he is. I will find a way to destroy him. Despite everything, Amara smiled. I know you will. She hung up just as the elevator chimed. Kael stepped out looking exactly like himself again. Controlled, composed, untouchable. His tie was perfect. His hair was smoothed back. His face revealed nothing. For a second, Amara wondered if she had hallucinated the entire morning. Then Kael saw her on the sofa, and his entire expression cracked open. Relief, raw, and desperate. You stayed, he said. I promised I would. Kael crossed the room and knelt in front of the sofa, bringing himself eye level with her. Up close, she could see the exhaustion still shadowing his face. How was the meeting? Amara asked. I signed a $6 billion deal, and I don't remember a single word anyone said. Kael's hands were shaking again. I spent 3 hours thinking about whether you'd be here when I got back. I'm here. For how long? The question hung between them. Amara reached out and touched his face gently. His eyes fluttered closed at the contact. I don't know, she said honestly. This morning I was ready to quit, walk away and never look back. And then you kissed me, and now everything is different, and I don't know how to process any of it. Tell me what you need. Kael's voice was barely above a whisper. I'll give you anything. I need time. I need you to prove that this isn't just panic because I threatened to leave. I need to know that tomorrow you won't go back to being the man who doesn't ask my birthday. September 14th, Kael said immediately. Amara blinked. What? Your birthday. September 14th. You're 26. You grew up in Busan. Your mother died when you were 19 and you put yourself through culinary school working 3 jobs. Your favorite color is emerald green. You have a scar on your left knee from falling off a bike when you were 8. You're allergic to shellfish. And you hate horror movies, but you'll watch romantic comedies when you think no one is paying attention. Amara's hand fell away from his face. How do you know all that? I read your employment file this morning, cover to cover, 3 times. Kael opened his eyes. I know it's not the same as asking. I know it doesn't make up for 4 months of being blind, but I'm trying, Amara. I'm trying to catch up on everything I should have known from the beginning. Tears were streaming down Amara's face now, and she didn't bother wiping them away. You read my file 3 times. I would have read it 20 times if it meant understanding you better. Kael reached up and carefully wiped her tears with his thumb. I'm sorry for all of it, for making you invisible, for only seeing you when I was about to lose you. I can't promise I'll be good at this, but I can promise I'll try. Amara looked into his bloodshot eyes and saw the truth there. Kael Jin was terrified, and for the first time in 4 months, she finally felt seen. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay, I'll stay, but Kael... She caught his hand against her face. The second you treat me like furniture again, I'm gone. No second chances, no explanations, just gone. Understood. And we're doing this properly. No more employer-employee. If we're doing this, we're equals. Something flickered across Kael's face. Fear, maybe. Or hope. Equals, he repeated quietly, like he was testing out a foreign language. Can you handle that? Amara challenged. Having someone in your empire who you can't control? Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly, carefully, he leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers. I don't want to control you, he whispered. I just want you to stay. Amara closed her eyes and let herself believe him. Behind them, rain still hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled out below like an empire of glass and neon, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the harbor. But inside the penthouse, for the first time in 4 months, the silence between them felt like something other than emptiness. It felt like the fragile beginning of something real. The first crack appeared 3 days later. Amara was washing vegetables in the penthouse sink when Kael's phone rang for the 18th time that morning. He was standing at the dining table with his laptop open, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the screen like he was trying to set it on fire through sheer force of will. He ignored the call. It rang again immediately. Are you going to answer that? Amara asked without looking up from the carrots she was peeling. No. It might be important. It's always important. Kael's voice had that edge to it, the one that meant someone somewhere was about to have a very bad day. That's the problem. The phone finally stopped ringing. 30 seconds later, it started again. Kael grabbed it and answered without checking the caller ID. What? Amara couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but she watched Kael's knuckles go white around the phone. Tell them the deal is off, he said flatly. I don't care what their counteroffer is. They had 48 hours to decide and they wasted it playing games. Find someone else. He hung up and threw the phone onto the leather sofa hard enough that it bounced. Amara set down the peeler. Bad morning? Every morning is a bad morning when you're surrounded by incompetent people who can't follow simple instructions. Kael closed the laptop with more force than necessary. I gave them explicit parameters. They ignored half of them and now they're surprised the deal collapsed. Maybe they had reasons. There are no good reasons for incompetence. The words came out sharp, dismissive, like he was talking to an employee instead of someone he'd kissed 3 days ago while begging her to stay. Amara felt something cold settle in her chest. Right, she said quietly. I forgot. You don't do reasons, just results. Kael looked up sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Amara turned back to the vegetables. Forget I said anything. Amara, I'm making lunch. Do you want the chicken with rosemary or the salmon? I want you to tell me what you meant by that comment. Amara's hands stilled on the cutting board. She took a slow breath before turning around. Kael was watching her with that same analytical stare. The one that peeled back layers and found weaknesses. The one that made billion-dollar deals and crushed competitors. You're doing it again, Amara said. Doing what? Talking to me like I'm one of your employees. Like I'm supposed to accept whatever mood you're in without questioning it. Kael's expression shifted. Not quite guilt, but something close to it. I'm stressed. The Singapore acquisition is falling apart, and I have 17 other fires to put out before the end of the day. I understand that. But when you talk to me like that, it makes me feel like we're right back where we started. You in control, me invisible. You're not invisible. Then stop treating me like I am. They stared at each other across the kitchen island. The tension between them felt sharp enough to draw blood. Kael's phone rang again. He ignored it this time, but Amara could see the effort it took. His eyes kept flicking toward the sofa where the phone was buzzing itself into a frenzy. Answer it, Amara said. I know you want to. I want to finish this conversation. There's nothing to finish. You're stressed, you snapped at me, I called you on it. Now go deal with your fires before you burn down the entire empire. Kael looked like he wanted to argue, but the phone kept ringing and Amara could see him calculating which problem needed immediate attention. Work won. It always won. He grabbed the phone and disappeared into his private office without another word. Amara stood alone in the kitchen, listening to his muffled voice through the closed door, and wondered what the hell she was doing. That night, Kael didn't come to bed until after 3 in the morning. Amara knew because she was still awake, staring at the ceiling of his bedroom. Their bedroom now, technically, though it still felt like sleeping in a museum exhibit. Everything was too perfect, too controlled, too much like Kael himself. She heard the office door open. Footsteps across the living room. The bathroom light clicking on. 10 minutes later, Kael slid into bed beside her. He didn't touch her, just lay on his back staring at the same ceiling. "You're awake," he said finally. "Can't sleep." "Me neither." Silence stretched between them. Not comfortable, not warm, just empty. "I'm sorry about this morning," Kael said into the darkness. "You were right. I was treating you like an employee instead of—" He paused. "Instead of what you are, what am I?" Amara turned her head to look at him. "Because I'm honestly not sure anymore." Kael's jaw tightened. "You're the person I'm trying not to lose." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have right now." Amara rolled onto her side, facing away from him. "That's the problem, Kael. You're so terrified of losing me that you're holding on too tight. But you won't actually let me in." She felt him shift behind her. His hand hovered near her shoulder, but didn't make contact. "I don't know how to let people in," he said quietly. "I know. But you promised you'd try." "I am trying." "Are you?" Amara's voice cracked slightly. "Because from where I'm standing, it feels like you want me to stay, but you don't actually want to change anything. You still work 18-hour days. You still shut down when you're stressed. You still treat everyone around you like chess pieces instead of human beings. That's not fair, isn't it?" Amara sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. 3 days ago, you told me you wanted equals. But equals means you actually have to share your life with me. Not just let me exist in the margins while you run your empire. Kael sat up too. Even in the darkness, she could see the exhaustion carved into his face. "I have 237 employees depending on me to keep this company running," he said. "I have investors in 4 countries waiting for updates. I have deals worth billions of dollars that will collapse if I take my eye off them for even a second. I can't just stop being who I am because you want more attention." The words hit Amara like a slap. "Is that what you think this is about?" She felt tears burning behind her eyes. "Attention? I don't know what this is about. You knew what my life looked like when you agreed to stay." "I agreed to stay because you told me you'd try. But trying means actually making space for me in your life, not just moving me from the staff quarters to your bed and expecting that to be enough." Kael's hands clenched into fists on top of the blanket. "What do you want from me, Amara? You want me to quit my job? Abandon my responsibilities? Become someone I'm not? I want you to look at me the way you looked at me 3 days ago, like I mattered more than your next acquisition. You do matter. Then prove it." Amara threw off the blanket and stood up. "Because right now it feels like I'm just another thing you're trying to control. Another problem you need to solve so you can get back to work." "That's not true, isn't it?" Amara grabbed her robe from the chair. "You read my employee file 3 times and memorized my birthday. That's sweet, Kael. But it's also exactly what you do with a business rival. Research them, find their weaknesses, figure out what they need to hear. And I'm terrified that's all this is to you, just another negotiation." Kael stood up, his bare chest rising and falling with sharp breaths. "You think I'm manipulating you? I think you're so used to controlling everything that you don't know how to just be with someone. And I can't compete with an empire, Kael. I won't." "I'm not asking you to compete." "Yes, you are. Every time you choose work over this conversation, every time you shut down instead of letting me in, you're asking me to accept crumbs while you give everything else to Shinra Corporation." Kael's expression went cold, the kind of cold that meant walls were going up. "Maybe you're right," he said quietly. "Maybe I can't do this. Maybe I'm not capable of being what you need." The admission should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like losing. Amara walked to the door, her hand on the handle. "I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight. Amara, I need space. We both do." She left before he could argue. The guest room was down the hall, smaller than the master bedroom, but still ridiculously luxurious. Amara climbed into the cold bed and finally let herself cry. She had been so stupid, thinking Kael Jin could actually change, thinking 3 days of effort meant anything against 36 years of emotional walls. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. "Maya, how's paradise?" Amara stared at the text, then typed, "I think I made a mistake." The response came immediately. "Coffee. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. Don't argue." Amara set the phone down and pulled the blanket over her head. Through the walls, she could hear Kael's office door open again, his footsteps pacing. The muffled sound of him on the phone, voice clipped and professional. Choosing work. Always choosing work. Dick. Amara met Maya at the coffee shop in the Shinra Tower lobby at 7 the next morning. Maya took one look at her face and ordered a double espresso without asking. Talk, Maya said, sliding the cup across the table. Amara told her everything, the fight, the accusations, the way Kael had looked at her like she was asking for the impossible. Maya listened without interrupting. When Amara finally finished, she sat back in her chair and sighed. Okay, I'm going to say something you're not going to like. Great. You're both right. Amara blinked. What? He's right that you knew what his life looked like when you agreed to this. And you're right that he needs to actually make space for you if this is going to work. Maya took a sip of her coffee. The question is whether he's capable of changing. And honestly, Amara, I don't know if he is. So what do I do? You decide what your breaking point is, and then you stick to it. Amara wrapped her hands around the warm cup. What if my breaking point is right now? Then you leave. And you don't look back. But what if... No, Maya's voice was firm. No what-ifs. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. And Kael Jin built his entire empire on control. Asking him to give that up is like asking him to stop breathing. He said he'd try. People say a lot of things when they're afraid of losing something. It doesn't mean they know how to follow through. Amara felt tears burning again. She blinked them back furiously. I don't want to give up on him. I know, honey, but you also can't set yourself on fire to keep him warm. They sat in silence for a moment, the morning rush swirling around them. People in expensive suits rushing to meetings, assistants juggling coffee orders, the normal chaos of Shinra Tower waking up. Amara's phone buzzed. A text from Kael. Where are you? She stared at it, then typed back, coffee with a friend. The response came immediately. We need to talk. I know. Tonight. Now. Amara's jaw tightened. She showed the screen to Maya, who rolled her eyes. See what I mean? He can't even give you one morning without trying to control your schedule. He's probably just... Don't make excuses for him. Maya's voice was gentle but firm. If you start making excuses, you'll never stop. Amara looked at the text again, then turned off her phone and shoved it in her purse. What are you doing? Maya asked. Taking your advice. Setting boundaries. Maya smiled. Good. Now, finish your coffee and tell me what you actually want from all this. Amara thought about it. Really thought about it. I want to matter to him as much as his empire does, she said finally. I want him to choose me sometimes. Not always. Just sometimes. Enough that I know I'm not just convenient. That's reasonable. Is it? Because he made it sound like I was asking him to give up everything. That's because men like Kael don't understand middle ground. They think in absolutes. All or nothing, win or lose. Maya leaned forward. But relationships aren't business deals, Amara. They're messy and complicated, and they require compromise. And if he can't figure that out, then you deserve better. Amara knew Maya was right. She just wasn't sure she was ready to accept it yet. When Amara finally returned to the penthouse at 10 that morning, Kael was waiting by the elevator. He looked terrible. Still wearing yesterday's clothes, hair uncombed, eyes shadowed with exhaustion, like he hadn't slept at all after she'd left. You turned off your phone, he said. I needed space. For 3 hours. Yes. Amara walked past him toward the kitchen. Is that a problem? Kael followed her. You can't just disappear without telling me where you're going. I'm not your employee anymore, remember? I don't have to report my location. That's not what I... Kael stopped, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I was worried. About what? That I'd run away in the middle of a coffee date? Yes. The admission came out quiet, almost vulnerable. Amara paused with her hand on the refrigerator door. She turned to look at him. Kael was standing in the middle of the kitchen, looking lost. Actually, genuinely lost. Like the ground had disappeared beneath his feet, and he didn't know how to get his balance back. I can't do this if you're going to panic every time I leave the building, Amara said gently. I'm not panicking. You look like you haven't slept. Your hands are shaking, and you're standing in your own kitchen like you don't know what to do with yourself. She walked over to him slowly. That's panic, Kael. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. I don't know how to do this, he said finally. I told you that. I don't know how to care about someone without trying to control every variable. It's how I'm built. Then you need to rebuild yourself. Amara reached up and touched his face. He leaned into her palm like he was starving for contact. Because I can't live in a cage, even if it's made of gold and good intentions. I'm trying. I know. But trying isn't enough if nothing actually changes. Kael's eyes closed. What do you want me to do? I want you to trust me. I want you to believe that I'm not going to disappear just because you can't see me for a few hours. And I want you to stop treating our relationship like a business deal you need to optimize. I don't know how to do any of that. Then we're both going to have to figure it out together. Amara dropped her hand. But Kael, I need you to understand something. I'm not going to wait forever while you figure out how to let me in. At some point, I'll need to see actual progress, not just promises. How much time do I have? The question was so desperately pragmatic that Amara almost laughed. This isn't a negotiation with a deadline. It's a relationship. It works when we both choose to make it work. Every day. Sometimes every hour. She stepped back. And right now I'm choosing to stay. But that choice isn't permanent. It's contingent on you choosing me back. Kael looked at her like she was speaking a foreign language. I am choosing you. No, you're choosing to not lose me. That's different. I don't understand the distinction. I know. Amara felt exhaustion settling into her bones. That's the problem. She walked past him toward the bedroom to change clothes. Behind her, she heard Kael's phone start ringing again. This time, he let it go to voicemail. It was a small thing, barely worth noticing, but Amara noticed anyway. The fragile peace lasted exactly 4 days. On Tuesday afternoon, Amara was reorganizing the penthouse library when she found the folder. It was tucked between 2 financial reports on Kael's desk, partially hidden beneath a stack of contracts. She wouldn't have noticed it at all, except the corner was sticking out. And when she moved the contracts to dust underneath, the folder fell open. Her own face stared back at her from a surveillance photo. Amara's hands went numb. The photo showed her sitting in the coffee shop lobby with Maya. 4 days ago, the morning she'd turned off her phone. There were more photos underneath. Her walking into the building, standing at the elevator, even one of her in the lobby flower shop looking at orchids, all time-stamped, all dated within the last week. Beneath the photos was a typed report. Subject: Kael, Amara. Daily movement log, compiled by Private Security Detail. The folder slipped from Amara's fingers and hit the floor. She was still staring at it when Kael walked out of his office. What are you doing at my desk? His voice was sharp, professional. Then he saw the folder on the floor. His expression went carefully blank. Amara, you're having me followed. Her voice came out flat, emotionless, like her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. You hired people to track my movements. It's not what it looks like. Really? Amara picked up the folder with shaking hands. Because it looks like you put me under surveillance, like I'm a hostile acquisition you need to monitor. It's for your protection. The words landed like a bomb. Amara looked up at him slowly. My protection. Yes. You're living with one of the most powerful men in Seoul. That makes you a target. I needed to make sure. When did this start? Amara cut him off. When did you start having me followed? Kael's jaw tightened. The day you moved into the penthouse. 4 months. He had been watching her for 4 months. Every coffee date with Maya, every time she left the building, every moment she thought was private had been documented, photographed, filed away in folders like she was a subject under observation. Get out, Amara said quietly. Let me explain. Get out! The words tore out of her throat. Get out of this room right now before I do something we'll both regret. Kael took a step toward her. You're overreacting. I'm overreacting? Amara's voice pitched higher. You've been stalking me for 4 months and I'm overreacting? It's not stalking. It's security protocol. Everyone in my life has protection detail. Did you tell me about it? Silence. Did you ask my permission? More silence. Did you think for even 1 second that I might have a problem with being treated like a prisoner in a glass tower? Amara threw the folder at him. Photos scattered across the floor like evidence at a crime scene. You talk about wanting equals, but you can't even give me the basic fucking courtesy of privacy. I was trying to keep you safe. You were trying to control me. Amara's vision was blurring with tears. That's what this has always been about. Control. You don't know how to have a relationship with someone you can't monitor and manage and manipulate into staying exactly where you want them. That's not true, isn't it? Amara gestured at the photos on the floor. You read my employee file 3 times. You memorized every detail about my life. You put me under surveillance, and you did all of it without asking me, without including me. Because you don't actually want a partner, Kael. You want someone you can collect data on and predict and control. I don't want to control you. Yes, you do, Amara was shouting now. You want to control everything. It's who you are. And I was stupid enough to think you could change. Kael's expression went cold, the walls slamming back up so fast she could practically hear them locking into place. If you want to leave, the door is right there. The words hit Amara like a physical blow. Is that what you want? She asked quietly. For me to leave? I want you to stop acting like I'm the villain for trying to protect you. Protection requires consent, Kael. This is surveillance, and the fact that you can't tell the difference is exactly why this will never work. She walked past him toward the bedroom. Her whole body was shaking so hard she could barely stand, but she refused to fall apart in front of him. Where are you going? Kael's voice was still cold, still controlled. To pack my things. Amara, don't. She stopped in the doorway without turning around. Don't say my name like that. Don't use that voice. The one that's supposed to make me forget that you've been lying to me for 4 months. I never lied. You lied by omission, which is worse because it means you knew I'd have a problem with it. You knew I'd feel violated, and you did it anyway because controlling me was more important than respecting me. She walked into the bedroom and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Behind her, she heard Kael's office door slam even harder. Then silence. The kind of silence that meant everything was broken. Amara collapsed onto the bed and finally let herself fall apart. Back. She packed mechanically, moving through the bedroom like a ghost. Clothes folded into her suitcase. Toiletries from the bathroom. The few personal items she'd brought with her when she'd moved from the staff quarters 4 days ago. It all fit in one bag. 4 months of her life, packed and ready to disappear in under an hour. She was zipping the suitcase when someone knocked on the bedroom door. Not Kael. The knock was too tentative. Miss Vale? Christine's voice filtered through the door. May I come in? Amara wiped her eyes. It's open. Christine stepped inside, her usual professional composure slightly cracked around the edges. She looked at the suitcase on the bed and something sad crossed her face. I heard shouting, she said quietly. Are you all right? I'm fine, just leaving. I see. Christine hesitated. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About what? The surveillance. I was the one who compiled those reports. Christine's voice was steady, but her hands were clasped tight in front of her. Mr. Jin asked me to coordinate with his security team. I should have told you. I almost did several times, but he's my employer and I... She stopped. That's not an excuse. I'm sorry. Amara sat down on the edge of the bed. Did everyone know? The whole staff? Only security and myself. He was very specific about keeping it quiet. Of course he was. Amara laughed bitterly. Can't have the subject of observation knowing she's being watched. Might compromise the data. Christine moved further into the room. He really does care about you, you know, in his own deeply dysfunctional way. Caring about someone and respecting them are 2 different things. I know. But for what it's worth, I've worked for Mr. Jin for 6 years. I've never seen him panic before, not during hostile takeovers, not during board coup attempts, not even when the Seoul office almost collapsed 3 years ago. Christine met Amara's eyes. But these past few days, watching you pull away, he's been terrified. Good. Maybe terror will teach him something. Maybe, Christine's expression was sympathetic. Or maybe it will just make him worse. Men like Mr. Jin don't know how to process fear. They turn it into control. More surveillance, more manipulation, more walls. I can't fix him, Christine. I know. I'm not asking you to. Christine moved toward the door. I just thought you should know that whatever he did it because he's never learned how to love someone without destroying them in the process. She left before Amara could respond. Amara stared at the closed door for a long moment. Then she grabbed her suitcase and headed for the elevator. Kael was standing in the living room when she emerged. He'd changed into fresh clothes, combed his hair, rebuilt his armor, but his eyes were still bloodshot. Don't go, he said. Amara kept walking. Please, I'll fire the security detail, I'll destroy the files, whatever you want. I want you to understand why I'm leaving. Amara stopped at the elevator and finally turned to face him. I'm not leaving because you hired security. I'm leaving because you never once thought to ask me how I felt about it. Because even after everything we've been through, even after all your promises about equals and trying and change, you still don't trust me enough to include me in decisions about my own life. I trust you. No, you don't. You trust your ability to control variables. That's different. The elevator chimed, doors sliding open. Kael took a step toward her. What if I'm getting married? The word stopped her cold. What? Kael's hands were shaking again. That's what you told me in the outline, in the original story. You said, I'm getting married. This is goodbye. His voice cracked slightly. Is that what this is? Are you choosing someone else? There is no one else, Kael. Then why does it feel like you're saying goodbye forever? Amara felt tears streaming down her face again. Because I am. I'm saying goodbye to the version of this relationship where I keep hoping you'll change, where I keep making excuses for why you treat me like a problem to solve instead of a person to love. I do love you. The confession hung in the air between them. 3 words, said too late. I don't think you know what that word means, Amara said softly. I think you know possession. I think you know fear of losing things. But love? Love requires letting go of control. And you'd rather die than do that. Kael's face crumpled, all the walls coming down at once, revealing nothing but raw desperation underneath. Don't leave, he whispered. Please, I'll do anything. Amara stepped into the elevator. Learn to let me be free, she said. Then maybe we can try again. The doors started to close. Kael lunged forward, his hand slamming against the steel to force them open. I don't want to lose you. Then stop trying to own me. She pressed the button for the ground floor. This time, Kael didn't stop the doors from closing. The last thing Amara saw before the elevator descended was Kael standing alone in his glass fortress, looking like a king who had just realized his entire empire was built on nothing but fear and smoke. The elevator carried her down through 50 floors of steel and concrete. By the time the doors opened on the ground level, Amara had stopped crying. She walked out of Shinra Tower with 1 suitcase and 4 months of emotional wreckage, and she didn't look back. Behind her, somewhere high above in a penthouse that cost more than most people made in a lifetime, Kael Jin stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows and watched her disappear into the Seoul streets. For the first time in his carefully controlled life, he had no idea how to fix what he'd broken. And for the first time since she'd met him, Amara didn't care. She was finally, terribly, devastatingly free. Maya's apartment smelled like jasmine tea and old books. Amara sat on the worn couch with her suitcase at her feet, staring at nothing, while Maya moved around the tiny kitchen, making noise that was probably supposed to be comforting. The mug of tea Maya had pressed into her hands 20 minutes ago had gone cold without Amara taking a single sip. You need to eat something, Maya said, appearing in the doorway with a plate of toast. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten in 12 hours. I'm fine. Maya set the plate down on the coffee table with enough force to make Amara flinch. Stop saying you're fine. You're not fine. You just walked away from a billionaire who's been obsessed with you for months. That's not fine. That's catastrophic. He was having me followed, Maya. I know, you told me 3 times. Maya sat down next to her. And he's a controlling psychopath, and you did the right thing by leaving, but that doesn't mean you're fine. Amara finally looked at her friend. Maya's expression was fierce and protective, and everything Amara needed right now. I don't know what I am, Amara admitted quietly. I feel empty, like I left pieces of myself up in that penthouse, and I don't know how to get them back. That's called trauma, honey, and it's normal after what you've been through. 4 months, Amar's voice cracked. I wasted 4 months on someone who sees people as things to control. You didn't waste anything. You learned what you won't tolerate. That's valuable. Amara's phone buzzed on the couch cushion between them. Both women looked at it. Kael's name lit up the screen. This was the 43rd time he'd called in 6 hours. Amara had stopped counting after 30. Block him, Maya said. I can't. Yes, you can. Watch. Maya grabbed the phone. Maya, don't. Too late. Maya had already answered and put it on speaker. Stop calling her. Maya's voice was ice. She doesn't want to talk to you. Silence on the other end. Then Kael's voice, rough and strained. Put Amara on the phone. No. This doesn't concern you. Everything that concerns her concerns me. I'm her friend. You remember what those are, right? People who actually care about your well-being instead of just wanting to own you. I need to speak with her. Kael's control was slipping. Amar could hear it in the slight tremor underneath his words. Please. She said everything she needed to say when she walked out of your surveillance state. Now leave her alone. Maya hung up. The phone immediately started ringing again. This time, Maya powered it off completely and shoved it between the couch cushions. There, problem solved. Amar felt tears burning behind her eyes. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Because you're too soft, and you would have answered eventually. Maya grabbed Amara's cold hands. Listen to me. Kael Jin is not going to stop until you give him a clear boundary. And that boundary is silence. Complete radio silence until he understands that he can't manipulate his way back into your life. What if he doesn't understand? Then he'll learn the hard way that money can't buy everything. Amara wanted to believe her. She wanted to believe that walking away was enough, that Kael would accept her decision and move on with his carefully controlled life. But deep down, she knew better. Kael Jin didn't accept losses. He eliminated them. The knock came at 2 a.m. Amara jerked awake on Maya's couch, her heart hammering against her ribs. Maya appeared in the hallway wearing an oversized shirt and fury on her face. If that's him, I'm calling the police, Maya hissed. Another knock. Harder this time. Maya looked through the peephole. Her expression shifted from anger to confusion. It's not Kael, she said quietly. It's his assistant. Amara sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. Christine? Maya unlocked the door but kept the chain on. Through the narrow gap, Amara could see Christine standing in the hallway looking exhausted and desperate. I'm sorry to come here so late, Christine said, but I need to speak with Amara. It's urgent. How did you even find this address? Maya demanded. Christine's expression was grim. Mr. Jin's security team has a file on everyone in Amara's life. I pulled yours before I left the office. Of course he does. Maya looked back at Amara. Do you want to talk to her? Amara should have said no, should have kept the door closed and the boundary firm. But something in Christine's face made her nod. Maya reluctantly unhooked the chain and let Christine inside. The assistant stepped into the small apartment looking completely out of place in her expensive suit and heels. She was carrying a leather briefcase that she set down carefully on the coffee table. Whatever you're here to deliver, we're not interested, Maya said. If it's money, she doesn't want it. If it's threats, we'll go to the police. If it's some kind of legal NDA bullshit, it's evidence, Christine interrupted quietly. Evidence that Amara needs to see before she makes any final decisions about leaving. Amara's stomach dropped. Evidence of what? Christine opened the briefcase and pulled out a thin manila folder. She hesitated before handing it over. I debated whether to show you this, Christine said. It violates about 17 corporate policies and my employment contract. But I watched you walk out of that tower this morning and I realized something. She met Amara's eyes. You think Kael was surveilling you because he wanted to control you. And that's partially true. But it's not the whole story. Amara took the folder with shaking hands. What is this? Open it. Inside were photographs. But not of Amara. The first photo showed a man in his 50s with sharp features and cold eyes. He was standing outside a high-rise building talking to someone whose face was turned away from the camera. Who is this? Amara asked. Marcus Voss, Kael's biggest competitor in the European market. Christine pulled out another photo. This was taken 3 months ago, 2 weeks after you started working in the penthouse. The next photo showed the same man meeting with a different person in what looked like a parking garage. This time, the second person's face was visible. Amara's blood went cold. She knew that face. Ethan Mercer, the architect who had walked into the tower lobby with roses, the man who had made her laugh, the man who had seemed so different from Kael's cold control. "I don't understand," Amara whispered. Christine pulled out more photos. Ethan meeting with Marcus Voss in restaurants, hotel lobbies, parked cars. The timestamps showed meetings over the course of months. Marcus Voss has been trying to destroy Kael for years, Christine explained. He's attempted hostile takeovers, corporate espionage, blackmail. Nothing worked because Kael is too careful. She tapped the photo of Ethan. So 3 months ago, Voss changed tactics. He found your name in a background check on Kael's household staff, and he hired someone to get close to you. The room tilted sideways. "No," Amara said. "That's not possible. Ethan was just playing a role." Christine's voice was gentle but firm. "He's a corporate operative who specializes in honeypot schemes. His job was to befriend you, earn your trust, and eventually use you to get access to Kael's private files or financial information." Maya grabbed the folder and started flipping through photos. "Holy shit! The roses in the lobby," Christine continued. "The coffee dates, the charming smile. All of it was calculated to make you feel seen and valued by someone who wasn't Kael, to create emotional distance between you and your employer." Amara felt bile rising in her throat. "Why didn't Kael tell me?" "He tried. 3 times. Christine pulled out another document. "But every time he started to explain, you interpreted it as him being controlling or jealous. And honestly, you weren't wrong. He was controlling and jealous, but he was also protecting you from something real." The document was a transcript, a conversation between Ethan and Marcus Voss, recorded 2 weeks ago. Amara's hands shook as she read it. Voss. "Has she given you anything useful yet?" Mercer. "Not yet. She's still loyal to Jin, but I'm making progress. She's starting to trust me." Voss. "We're running out of time. The Singapore deal closes in 6 weeks. I need access to his private server before then." Mercer. "I'll get it. She has keycard access to the penthouse. Once I convince her to bring me up there, I can clone her credentials and—" Amara stopped reading. She was going to be sick. Maya grabbed her shoulders. "Breathe, just breathe." "He was using me." Amara's voice came out strangled. "The whole time. Every smile, every conversation, every moment I thought someone actually saw me as a person instead of a possession." "Was a lie," Christine finished quietly. "Yes. And Kael knew. From the beginning. The surveillance wasn't about controlling you, Amara. It was about protecting you from someone who wanted to use you as a weapon against him." The room was spinning. Amara pressed her hands against her eyes, trying to force the world to make sense again. "Why didn't he just tell me the truth?" Her voice cracked. "Why all the secrets and the surveillance and the—" "Because he's Kael Jin." Christine's expression was sad. "He doesn't know how to protect people by trusting them with information. He only knows how to protect them by controlling every variable. It's toxic and dysfunctional and completely in character." "So what?" Maya's voice was sharp. "We're supposed to feel sorry for him? He still violated her privacy for months." "I'm not asking you to feel sorry for him. I'm asking Amara to understand the full context before she walks away permanently." Christine closed the briefcase. "Kael made terrible choices. He should have told you the truth from the beginning, but his instinct to protect you wasn't wrong. The threat was real." Amara looked up slowly. "Where's Ethan now?" "We don't know. He disappeared 6 hours ago, right around the time you left the tower." Christine's expression darkened. "Marcus Voss pulled him off the operation, which means either they're giving up or they're changing tactics." "Changing to what?" "That's what scares me, and it's what scares Kael, even if he's too proud to admit it." Christine stood up. "I need to go before someone realizes I took these files. But Amara, please be careful. Voss doesn't give up easily, and now that you're no longer under Kael's protection—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. After Christine left, Amara and Maya sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Maya spoke. "What are you thinking?" I'm thinking I don't know who to trust anymore. Amara's voice was hollow. Kael lied to me for months, but Ethan lied to me worse. And I was so busy being angry at Kael for being controlling that I walked straight into exactly the trap he was trying to protect me from. That's not your fault, isn't it? I made it so easy for Ethan. I was so desperate to feel seen by someone, anyone, that I didn't question why a successful architect would be interested in a penthouse housekeeper. Stop. Maya's voice was fierce. You are not responsible for some corporate spy targeting you. That's on him and on Marcus Voss and on every powerful man who treats people like chess pieces. Kael included. Kael included, Maya agreed. But at least Kael was trying to protect you in his deeply fucked up way. Ethan was just trying to use you. Amara stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Seoul was a blur of lights and movement. Somewhere out there, Kael was probably still awake in his glass fortress. And somewhere else, Ethan and Marcus Voss were planning their next move. And she was caught in the middle of a war she hadn't known she was fighting. I need to talk to Kael, Amara said quietly. Are you sure that's a good idea? No, but I need answers, real answers, not surveillance reports or corporate transcripts. I need to hear the truth from him. Maya pulled out Amara's phone from between the couch cushions and powered it on. Immediately, it started buzzing with notifications. Missed calls, voicemails, texts, all from Kael. The most recent text had been sent 15 minutes ago. I know Christine came to see you. I know you have the files now. Please let me explain everything. I'm sorry for all of it. Just please give me one chance to tell you the truth. Kay. Amara stared at the message. Then she typed back. Your penthouse, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Come alone. The response came in seconds. I'll be there. Amara set the phone down. Her hands were still shaking. Are you going to forgive him? Maya asked quietly. I don't know, but I'm going to hear what he has to say. Amara turned to face her friend. And then I'm going to decide whether anything between us was ever real, or if I was just another variable in his empire that he needed to manage. But Amara didn't sleep. She spent the rest of the night reading through every document Christine had left. The surveillance reports suddenly looked different through the lens of protection instead of control. Every coffee date with Ethan had a corresponding security notation flagging suspicious behavior. Every bouquet of flowers had a detail noting that the florist was a shell company registered to one of Marcus Voss's subsidiaries. Kael had known everything, and he had watched Amara fall for Ethan's trap without saying a word. By the time dawn broke over Seoul, Amara had worked herself into a cold fury. Maya drove her to Shinra Tower at 7:45. The lobby security recognized Amara immediately and waved her through without question. Apparently, Kael hadn't revoked her access. The private elevator carried her up through 50 floors of steel and glass. When the doors opened on the penthouse, Kael was standing by the windows exactly where she'd left him 16 hours ago. He looked worse than she'd ever seen him. Still wearing yesterday's wrinkled shirt, hair uncombed, eyes red-rimmed and hollow. When he turned and saw her, the relief on his face was so raw it almost hurt to look at. You came, he said. I came for answers, not reconciliation. The relief faded slightly. I understand. Amara stepped out of the elevator and set her bag down. Christine showed me the files, the photos of Ethan with Marcus Voss, the transcripts, all of it. Kael nodded slowly. I wanted to tell you. When? Amara's voice cracked like a whip. When did you want to tell me, Kael? The first time Ethan walked into the lobby with roses? The second time I mentioned him? The 10th time I left the building to meet him for coffee while you watched through your surveillance feeds and said nothing? I tried. You tried what? You tried hinting? Tried being mysteriously jealous? Tried hoping I'd figure it out on my own? Amara walked toward him, her anger building with every step. You watched me fall for his act. You watched me trust him. You watched me pull away from you because I thought you were being controlling when you were actually right about everything. And you never once just told me the truth. Kael's jaw tightened. Would you have believed me? The question stopped Amara cold. What? If I had sat you down 3 months ago and told you Ethan was a corporate spy hired to use you against me, would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was making it up to isolate you further? Amara opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Because he was right. 3 months ago, she would have thought he was being paranoid, controlling, Exactly the kind of manipulative behavior she'd accused him of yesterday. "That's not fair," she said quietly. "No, it's not." Kael's voice was tired. "None of this is fair, but I'm trying to explain why I made the choices I made. I knew you wouldn't believe me without proof. And by the time I had enough proof to show you, you were already attached to him, already seeing him as the healthy alternative to my toxic control. So you just let me walk into the trap?" "I never let you walk anywhere alone. Every coffee date, every conversation, every moment you spent with him was monitored by my security team. If he had made one move to hurt you or extract information, they would have intervened immediately. That's still control." "Yes." Kael's composure finally cracked. "Yes, it's control, because I don't know how to protect people any other way. I don't know how to trust that the world won't destroy the things I care about if I'm not watching every variable, managing every risk, planning for every possible disaster." His voice echoed in the silent penthouse. Amara stared at him, her anger temporarily derailed by the raw desperation in his words. "My father built this empire on trust," Kael continued, his voice shaking. "He trusted his business partners. He trusted his employees. He trusted that people would act with integrity and honor." He laughed bitterly, and they destroyed him for it. They stole from him, betrayed him, left him with nothing but debt and shame. "He died when I was 19, Amara. Died believing that trust was worth the cost." Amara had never heard Kael talk about his father before. "I rebuilt everything from scratch," Kael said. "And I promised myself I would never be that vulnerable again. I would never trust anyone enough to give them the power to destroy me. So I learned to control, to monitor, to manage every variable until there was no room for betrayal. That's not a life, Kael. That's a prison." "I know." Kael's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "But it kept me safe. Until you walked into my kitchen 4 months ago and made me want something I'd sworn I'd never want again." "What?" "To trust someone." Kael's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I wanted to trust you. And that terrified me more than any corporate takeover or hostile acquisition. Because I knew if I let you in, really let you in, you'd have the power to destroy me worse than any business rival ever could." Tears were streaming down Amara's face now. "So you built walls instead." "I built surveillance because I thought if I could just control enough variables, I could have you without risking vulnerability." Kael's expression crumpled. "And all I did was prove that you were right. I don't know how to love someone without trying to own them." The confession hung in the air between them. Amara wanted to forgive him. Every cell in her body wanted to close the distance and tell him it was okay, they could figure it out, they could learn together. But 4 months of being invisible, plus 16 hours of discovering she'd been a target in a corporate war, had left her with nothing but questions and exhaustion. "I need time," she said finally. "I need to process everything. The surveillance, the lies, Ethan, all of it. And I can't do that here." Kael nodded stiffly. "I understand." "Do you?" Amara stepped closer to him. "Because time means you don't call me 43 times in 6 hours. It means you don't send Christine with files trying to explain your behavior. It means you actually give me space instead of trying to manage my decision-making process." "How much time?" "I don't know. As much as I need." Kael looked like she'd physically struck him, but he nodded. "Okay?" Amara turned toward the elevator. "Amara, wait." She stopped but didn't turn around. "Marcus Voss is still out there," Kael said quietly. "And he knows you left my protection, which makes you vulnerable." "I can take care of myself." "Can you?" Kael's voice was sharp with fear. "These aren't people who play fair, Amara. They hurt anyone who gets in their way, and you're the perfect leverage against me now." "Then maybe you should have thought of that before you built an empire on fear and control. Please, just let me keep a security detail on you. They won't interfere with your life. You won't even know they're there." Amara finally turned around. "That's exactly the problem, Kael. I don't want invisible protection. I don't want to be managed like a corporate asset. If you want to help me, then teach me how to protect myself. Give me information, not surveillance. Treat me like a partner instead of a possession." Kael stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he pulled out his phone and sent a text. 30 seconds later, the elevator chimed. A man in a dark suit stepped out carrying a slim metal case. "This is Han," Kael said. Head of my personal security team. Han, give her the briefing. Han opened the case. Inside were photographs, documents, and what looked like a small electronic device. Marcus Voss operates through intermediaries, Han explained, his voice professional and clipped. His primary enforcer is a man named Viktor Sokolov, former military, specializes in extraction and intimidation. He pulled out a photo of a broad-shouldered man with cold eyes. If Voss targets you, Victor will be the one who makes contact. Amara studied the photo, committing the face to memory. What does he want? She asked. Access to Kael's private financial network. With that, Voss can manipulate stock prices, sabotage deals, and destroy the empire from the inside. Han pulled out the electronic device. This is a panic button. If you see Victor or anyone associated with Voss, press it. My team will be there in under 3 minutes. Why are you giving this to me? Amara asked Kael. Because you're right. I can't protect you by controlling you. Kael's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his fear. So I'm giving you the tools to protect yourself, and I'm trusting that you'll use them if you need to. Amara took the panic button and slipped it into her pocket. Thank you, she said quietly. That's not trust, Kael said. Trust is me letting you walk out that door knowing I can't monitor where you go or who you see. Trust is me believing you'll come back if you decide I'm worth it, instead of trying to manipulate the outcome. His hands were shaking again. And it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Amara looked at him standing there in his wrinkled shirt and exhausted eyes, finally admitting that he didn't have all the answers. And for the first time since she'd met him, he looked human instead of untouchable. I'll call you, she said. When I'm ready. Okay. She walked to the elevator. The doors opened with a soft chime. Amara? She paused. I know you don't believe me right now, Kael said quietly. But I meant what I said 16 hours ago. I love you, and I'm going to prove it by doing the one thing I swore I'd never do. What's that? Letting go. The elevator doors closed on his face. This time, Amara cried during the entire descent. On. 3 days passed in a blur of Maya's apartment, sleepless nights, and trying to piece her life back together. Amara found a job at a small restaurant in Gangnam. The pay was terrible compared to what Kael had given her, but the head chef was kind, and nobody expected her to be invisible. She didn't hear from Kael. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits or files delivered through Christine. True to his word, he was letting go. It should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt like grief. On the 4th morning, Amara was walking to work when she noticed the man following her. He was good. Stayed half a block back, changed his position whenever she turned a corner, never made direct eye contact. But Amara had spent 4 months being surveilled by professional security. She knew what a tail looked like. She pulled out her phone and texted Han. I'm being followed, southeast corner of Gangnam Station. The response came immediately. Stay in public, we're 3 minutes out. Amara ducked into a busy coffee shop and positioned herself near the window where she could see the street. The man following her stopped across the street, pretending to check his phone. It wasn't Viktor Sokolov from the briefing photo, but his build and stance screamed military training. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. She slipped her hand into her pocket and wrapped her fingers around the panic button. The man looked up. Their eyes met through the window. He smiled. Then he pulled out his own phone and made a call, his eyes never leaving hers. Amara pressed the panic button. 2 minutes later, 3 black SUVs pulled up outside the coffee shop. Han and his team emerged, moving with coordinated precision. The man across the street saw them and ran. Han's team gave chase while Han himself entered the coffee shop. Are you all right? He asked. I'm fine. Who was that? We'll find out. Han's expression was grim. But Miss Vale, this confirms our suspicion. Voss is escalating. That man wasn't trying to hide. He wanted you to know you were being watched. Why? Intimidation. He's sending a message that you're not safe, that leaving Kael's protection was a mistake. Amara felt cold dread settling in her chest. What do I do? You have 2 options. 1, you let us assign a full security detail, round-the-clock protection until we neutralize the threat. That's just Kael's surveillance all over again. Or 2, Han continued, you come back to the tower, back under Kael's direct protection where Voss can't touch you. Those aren't options. Those are ultimatums. Han's expression softened slightly. I know you want independence, Miss Vale, but this is bigger than your relationship with Kael. This is about your safety. And right now, the only thing standing between you and a very dangerous organization is the fact that they're not sure if Kael still cares enough about you to retaliate if they hurt you. The words hit Amara like ice water. So I'm leverage either way, she said bitterly. Either I'm under Kael's control and Voss can't touch me, or I'm alone and I become a target to hurt Kael indirectly. I'm sorry, but yes. Amara walked to the window and stared out at the Seoul streets. People rushing to work, living normal lives, completely unaware that corporate wars were being fought in the shadows around them. She had spent 4 months wanting to escape Kael's cage. Now she was discovering that the world outside wasn't freedom. It was just a different kind of trap. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. About what you saw. About what you know. Meet me at the Hannam Bridge Overlook. Tonight, 9 p.m. Come alone. Ethan. Amara's blood turned to ice. She showed the text to Han. His expression went dark. That's a trap. Obviously. You're not going. I know that, but Han... Amara looked up at him. If Ethan is reaching out directly, it means Voss is changing tactics, which means the intimidation phase is over. What comes next? Han didn't answer. He didn't have to. Amara knew exactly what came next. If she wouldn't come back to Kael voluntarily, Marcus Voss would force the issue. By taking her. Amara stared at Ethan's text message until the words blurred together. Han was already on his phone, barking orders to his team in rapid Korean. Through the coffee shop window, she could see 2 of his men returning from the chase, shaking their heads. The tail had escaped. We're moving you now, Han said, pocketing his phone. Back to the tower where we can control the perimeter. No. Han's expression hardened. Miss Vale, this isn't negotiable. You're a target. Ethan's message confirms they're preparing to make a move. I know. Amara's mind was racing, pieces clicking together with brutal clarity. Which is exactly why I'm not hiding in Kael's fortress while Voss circles closer. That's what he wants. Me scared, isolated, dependent on Kael's protection. Because that keeps you safe. No, it keeps me controlled. Amara stood up, slipping her phone into her pocket. I'm done being a chess piece in their game. I'm going to end this. By walking into an obvious trap? By using myself as bait? Han's eyes widened. Absolutely not. Listen to me. Amara kept her voice low but urgent. Ethan wants me at the Hannam Bridge Overlook tonight at 9. That's public enough that he can't just grab me without witnesses, but isolated enough for a private conversation. He thinks I'm alone and vulnerable. He thinks I'll show up desperate for answers. You're not seriously considering... I'm going to that meeting, but not alone. Amara met Han's gaze steadily. Your team will be there, hidden, watching. And when Ethan reveals what Voss really wants, when he makes his move, you'll have everything you need to shut them down permanently. Han was quiet for a long moment, his tactical mind clearly working through the angles. Kael will never approve this, he said finally. Then don't tell him until it's done. He's my employer. I can't... Your job is protecting me, right? Amara pressed. The best way to protect me long-term is to eliminate the threat. And the only way to do that is to catch them in the act. Let me draw them out. She could see Han wavering. He was good at his job, which meant he understood that running and hiding wasn't a permanent solution. Eventually, Voss would find another angle, another pressure point. The threat had to be neutralized. If anything goes wrong, Han started. It won't, because you'll be there. Han pulled out his phone again. This time he didn't call Kael. He called his team. New plan, he said curtly. We're running an intercept operation tonight at Hannam Bridge. I need surveillance on all approach vectors, 3 extraction teams on standby, and someone in the adjacent buildings with a clear sight line to the overlook. He paused. And get me everything we have on Ethan Mercer's current location and known associates. If he's making contact, I want to know who's backing him up. He hung up and looked at Amara with something that might have been respect. You have 8 hours to prepare, he said. Use them wisely, because if this goes wrong, Voss won't give you a second chance. 8. Amara spent the afternoon in Maya's apartment, trying to keep her hands from shaking. Maya had responded to the news of the plan with a 5-minute string of creative profanity, followed by a fierce hug and a promise to be waiting with alcohol and bad movies when it was over. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, Maya said, watching Amara check the panic button for the 7th time. Probably both. Just promise me you'll run if things go sideways. I promise. And Amara? Maya's voice went serious. Have you thought about what happens after? Assuming you survive this insanity? What do you mean? I mean with Kael. You're using his security team to take down a threat against both of you. That's not exactly maintaining distance. Amara sat down on the couch, exhaustion suddenly crashing over her. I don't know what happens with Kael. I don't even know if there's anything left to salvage between us. Do you want there to be? The question hit harder than it should have. Yes, Amara admitted quietly, which probably makes me an idiot. But Maya, when he looked at me yesterday and said he was learning to let go, I saw something real, something that wasn't about control or possession. He was terrified and he trusted me anyway. One moment of growth doesn't erase 4 months of surveillance. I know, but it's a start. Amara twisted the panic button between her fingers. The question is whether I'm willing to give him the chance to prove it wasn't just panic talking. And are you? Ask me again after tonight, if I survive. Maya threw a pillow at her. Don't even joke about that. But neither of them were really laughing. Back. At 8:30, Han picked Amara up in an unmarked sedan. Status? She asked, sliding into the passenger seat. 3 teams in position. Surveillance confirmed Ethan arrived at the Overlook 10 minutes ago. He's alone, but we're scanning for backup within a 2-block radius. Han handed her a tiny earpiece. Wear this. It's a live feed to me and the team. If anything feels wrong, say the word lighthouse, and we extract you immediately. Amara fitted the earpiece carefully, tucking it beneath her hair. What if he searches me for wires? He won't. He thinks you're emotional and desperate. People in that state don't think about operational security. Han's expression was grim. Use that. Let him think he has the upper hand. The more he talks, the more evidence we gather. The drive to Hannam Bridge took 15 minutes through evening traffic. Seoul sprawled around them in rivers of light and steel, millions of people living normal lives while Amara drove toward a confrontation that could destroy everything. Han parked 3 blocks from the Overlook. Last chance to back out, he said. Amara opened the door. I'll see you on the other side. She walked the remaining distance alone, her heart hammering against her ribs with every step. The Overlook was a small observation platform jutting out over the Han River, popular with tourists during the day but mostly deserted at night. Ethan was standing at the railing, his back to her, silhouetted against the city lights reflected in the dark water below. Amara's hands clenched into fists. This was the man who had made her laugh, who had seemed so different from Kael's cold control, who had played her like an instrument for 3 months. She walked forward, her footsteps deliberate on the concrete. Ethan turned. His smile was the same, warm and charming and completely false now that Amara knew what to look for. You came, he said. I wasn't sure you would. You said we needed to talk. We do. Ethan gestured to the view. Beautiful, isn't it? Seoul at night, all that light and life. Most people never see the darkness underneath. Cut the poetry, Ethan. Why am I here? His smile widened slightly. Right to business. I always liked that about you, Amara. You don't waste time on pleasantries. Answer the question. Ethan moved away from the railing, circling slowly, predatory. You're here because Marcus Voss has a proposition for you, one that could make both of our problems disappear. I don't have problems with Voss. I have problems with you lying to me for 3 months. Was it really lying? Ethan's voice was smooth, practiced. I meant everything I said to you, the smiles, the conversations, the attention, that was all real. It was a job. Jobs can become personal. He stopped circling, close enough now that Amara could smell his cologne. The same scent that had seemed appealing weeks ago now made her stomach turn. I liked you, Amara, more than I should have, which is why I'm giving you this chance. Chance for what? Ethan pulled a slim envelope from his jacket and held it out. Inside is a phone number and an account with $5 million in it. Voss's initial offer. All you have to do is give us access to Kael's private server for 48 hours. That's it. 2 days of data, and you walk away rich enough to disappear anywhere in the world. Amara stared at the envelope like it was a snake. You want me to betray Kael? I want you to be smart. Kael Jin is a sinking ship, Amara. Voss has been dismantling his empire piece by piece for months. The Singapore deal is already dead. The European investors are pulling out, and by this time next quarter, Shinra Corporation will be bleeding money. Ethan's voice dropped lower, almost intimate. You got out at the right time. Now capitalize on it. And if I say no? Ethan's smile faded. Then things get unpleasant. Voss doesn't accept obstacles. He removes them. There it was. The threat wrapped in a reasonable offer. Amara forced herself to stay calm. You're saying he'll kill me if I don't help him destroy Kael. I'm saying accidents happen to people who get in Marcus Voss's way. Car crashes, gas leaks, unfortunate muggings in dark alleys. Ethan stepped closer. I don't want that for you, Amara. Take the money. Give us the access codes. Walk away clean. Every word was being recorded through the earpiece. Han and his team were hearing everything. Amara just needed to keep him talking. How do I know Voss will honor the deal? She asked. How do I know he won't just take what he wants and kill me anyway? Because you're more valuable alive. Once we have Kael's data, you become our insurance policy. If Kael retaliates, we can leverage you to keep him in check. Ethan's expression was almost gentle. See? Everyone wins. You get rich, we get what we need, and Kael learns that empires built on control always collapse eventually. Except Kael loses everything. Kael Jin deserves to lose everything. The man is a tyrant, Amara. You saw it yourself. The surveillance, the manipulation, the way he treated you like property. Ethan reached out and touched her arm. The same gentle touch that had made her feel seen months ago. You were right to leave him. Now finish what you started. Amara looked down at his hand on her arm. Then she looked up into his lying eyes. No, she said clearly. Ethan's expression flickered. What? I said no. I'm not giving you anything, and you can tell Marcus Voss that if he wants Kael's data, he'll have to go through me to get it. Ethan's hand tightened on her arm, no longer gentle. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting you. Amara, be reasonable. Lighthouse, she said clearly. Ethan's eyes widened. What? The overlook flooded with light. 3 black SUVs pulled up simultaneously, blocking all exits. Han and his team emerged with the coordinated precision of a military operation, weapons drawn. Step away from her, Han's voice cut through the night air. Now! Ethan released Amara's arm and stepped back, his charming mask finally cracking into something cold and furious. You're wearing a wire, he said flatly, and you just confessed to extortion, conspiracy, and threatening my life. Amara's voice was steady despite her racing heart. Your employer is going to have a lot of questions when Han's team shares this recording with the authorities. Ethan's hand moved toward his jacket. Don't, Han warned, his weapon trained precisely on Ethan's center mass. But Ethan wasn't reaching for a gun. He pulled out his phone and hit a single button. Then he smiled at Amara with genuine malice. You think you're clever, he said quietly. You think you just won. But Amara, this was never about you giving us access codes. Cold dread flooded Amara's chest. What? This whole meeting was a diversion. While you were here playing hero, Voss's real team was hitting their actual target. Ethan's smile widened. Kael's penthouse, right now. The world tilted sideways. You're lying. Am I? Call him. See if he answers. Amara pulled out her phone with shaking hands and dialed Kael's number. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. No. The word came out broken. Han was already on his radio. All teams, redirect to Shinra Tower immediately. We have a priority 1 situation at the penthouse level. But even as he said it, Amara knew they were too late. Ethan had played them perfectly. The meeting, the offer, the threats, all of it was theater designed to pull Kael's security away from the tower and create a window for the real attack. You bastard, Amara whispered. Business, sweetheart. Nothing personal. Ethan looked at Han. I'll be going now. Unless you want to shoot an unarmed man on a public overlook and explain it to the cameras. He gestured upward. Amara looked up. 3 phone cameras were pointed at them from the adjacent building, recording everything. Voss had even planned for this contingency. Han's jaw clenched, but he lowered his weapon. Shooting Ethan would create a legal nightmare that would tie up his entire team for weeks. Ethan walked calmly toward the street where a car was already waiting. Before he got in, he turned back to Amara. "I really did like you," he said. "For what it's worth." Then he was gone. Amara stood frozen on the overlook while Han shouted orders into his radio, and the team scrambled back to their vehicles. Kael was alone, vulnerable, and she had led his protection detail straight into a trap. "We need to go," Han said urgently, grabbing her arm. "Now." They ran for the car. The drive back to Shinra Tower took 12 minutes that felt like hours. Han drove like a man possessed, weaving through traffic while speaking rapid-fire Korean into his radio. The responses coming back made his expression progressively darker. "What are they saying?" Amara demanded. "The tower's security system went offline 8 minutes ago. Someone hacked the network and shut down the cameras, alarms, everything." Han's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "We have no visual on the penthouse level." "What about Kael? Has anyone made contact?" "No, his phone is off the network." Amara felt sick. "How many people does Voss have up there?" "Unknown. But if they disabled the security system, they knew exactly what they were doing. This was planned down to the second." The tower came into view, all 50 floors of glass and steel glowing against the night sky. From the outside, everything looked normal, but Amara knew better. Somewhere up in that fortress, Kael was fighting for his life, while she had been miles away playing into Voss's hands. Han pulled up to the tower entrance with a screech of tires. Security guards were already mobilizing in the lobby, weapons drawn, organized chaos as they tried to regain control of the building's systems. "Where's Christine?" Amara asked, grabbing one of the guards. "Sent home hours ago," he replied, "before the system went down." Of course, Voss would have cleared out any potential interference. Han was already moving toward the emergency stairwell. "Elevators are locked down with the security system. We're taking the stairs, 49th floor." "Why not the 50th? "Because we need tactical advantage. We go up one floor below, assess the situation, then breach from an unexpected angle." Han was already pulling a weapon from his shoulder holster. "Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say. If I tell you to run, you run. Understood?" Amara nodded, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. They hit the stairwell at a run. 49 floors. Amara's legs were burning by the 20th floor. Her lungs screamed by the 30th. But she didn't slow down, couldn't slow down. Kael was up there. The man who had tried to control her, protect her, own her, and finally learned to let her go. The man she had walked away from 4 days ago. The man she was terrified of losing before she figured out if there was something real worth saving. By the time they hit the 49th floor, 3 of Han's team members had caught up with them. They moved through the stairwell door with practiced silence, weapons raised, clearing corners with military precision. The floor was deserted. Executive offices dark and empty. Han led them to a maintenance access panel and popped it open, revealing a narrow service ladder that ran between floors. "This goes up to the penthouse mechanical room," he whispered. "We can access the living space from there, but it's tight and there's no cover once we enter." "I don't care about cover," Amara said. "I care about getting to Kael." Han studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "Stay behind my team. If shooting starts, hit the floor and don't move until I give the all clear." They climbed. The ladder was cramped and dark, metal rungs cold against Amara's hands. Above them, she could hear muffled voices. Movement. Han reached the top first and carefully pushed open the access panel. The mechanical room was small and filled with HVAC equipment. Han pulled himself through and helped Amara up after him. His team followed in silence. Through the mechanical room door, Amara could hear voices clearly now. A man speaking Russian-accented English, calm, professional, and Kael's voice strained but defiant. "You're making a mistake, Victor. Voss sent you to intimidate me, not start a war." "No mistake." The Russian voice was flat. "Mr. Voss is done playing games with you, Jin. You give us access to your financial network, or we start removing fingers until you cooperate." Amara's blood turned to ice. Han held up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. He kicked open the door. The penthouse living room erupted into chaos. Viktor Sokolov stood near the windows, exactly matching the photo from the briefing. 6 feet of muscle and violence, holding a pistol casually in one hand. Kael was on his knees in the center of the room, hands zip-tied behind his back, blood running from a cut above his left eye. 3 more men were scattered around the room. Armed. Professional. The moment Han's team came through the door, everything happened at once. Victor's gun came up. Han fired first. The bullet caught Victor in the shoulder, spinning him backward against the glass. His gun clattered to the floor. The other 3 men opened fire. Amara hit the floor as bullets shredded the air above her head. Han and his team returned fire with brutal efficiency, using furniture as cover. Through the chaos, Amara's eyes locked on Kael. He was staring at her with an expression of pure horror. "What are you doing here?" he shouted over the gunfire. "Saving your life, you idiot!" "I told Han to keep you safe. And I told Han this was my fight, too." A bullet struck the marble column inches from Amara's head, spraying chips of stone across her face. Kael surged to his feet despite his bound hands and threw himself sideways, putting his body between Amara and the shooter. "Stay down!" he roared. Another burst of gunfire. One of Voss's men went down, clutching his leg. Han moved through the room like a professional, each shot precise and controlled. Within 90 seconds, 3 of Voss's team were disabled and on the floor. Only Victor remained standing. He had retrieved his gun with his good hand and was backing toward the emergency exit, weapon trained on Kael. "Nobody moves," Victor said, his accented voice deadly calm despite the blood soaking his shoulder. "Or Jin dies." Han froze, his weapon still aimed at Victor. The room went silent except for harsh breathing and the ringing aftermath of gunfire. Victor's eyes found Amara on the floor. "You," he said. "You're the woman. The leverage." Amara's stomach dropped. "Stand up," Victor ordered. "Don't," Kael said immediately. "Stay where you are." "Stand up, or I put a bullet in his head." Amara slowly got to her feet, her legs shaking. Victor smiled without humor. "Walk over here." Slowly. "Amara, don't take," Kael started. Victor shifted his aim and fired. The bullet hit the floor 6 inches from Kael's knee. "Next one goes in his kneecap," Victor said flatly. "Then the other knee. Then his elbows. You want to watch him scream, or you want to walk over here like a good girl?" Amara took a step forward. "No!" Kael's voice was raw with desperation. "Han, shoot him!" "Can't get a clean shot," Han said quietly. "He's using you as a shield." Amara took another step, then another. Victor waited until she was within arm's reach, then grabbed her and spun her around, putting her between himself and Han's team. His gun pressed against her temple. "Smart girl," Victor said quietly. "Now, here's what happens. Jin gives us the access codes. I leave with the woman. Everyone lives. Simple." "The codes won't do you any good," Kael said, his voice shaking with barely controlled fury. "The system has biometric locks. You need my fingerprints and retinal scan. Then you're coming with us, too." Victor's grip tightened on Amara. "Both of you, very romantic." "Let her go," Kael said. "Take me. Leave her out of this." "No deal. She's the only reason you're cooperating." Victor started backing toward the exit, dragging Amara with him. "Your security team follows us. She dies. You try anything heroic, she dies. You want her alive, you do exactly what I say." They were almost to the door. Amara could feel Victor's heartbeat against her back. Steady, controlled. He'd done this before. She thought about the panic button in her pocket. But Han and his team were already here. Pressing it wouldn't change anything. Her eyes met Kael's across the room. He looked destroyed. All his power, all his control, completely useless against a gun to the head of the only person who had ever made him feel something real. "I'm sorry," Kael said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, Amara. This is my fault. All of it." "Shut up," Victor ordered. But Kael kept talking, his eyes locked on Amara's. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I should have trusted you instead of trying to control everything. I should have—" Amara stopped listening to his words and started watching his eyes, because Kael's eyes weren't looking at her face. They were looking at her right hand, the one hanging near her pocket. Then his gaze flicked to Victor, to the gun pressed against Amara's temple, back to her hand. And Amara understood. Kael was telling her something, giving her information the same way he'd finally given her the panic button in the briefing files. Trust without control. Information without manipulation. A chance to save herself instead of waiting to be saved. Victor's gun was in his left hand, pressed to her left temple. His wounded right shoulder meant his grip on her was weaker on that side. If she moved fast enough, if she was willing to risk everything on one moment of violence. Amara's fingers closed around something in her pocket. Not the panic button. The pen she'd grabbed from Maya's apartment that morning. Metal, heavy, sharp. She met Kael's eyes one more time. He nodded, almost imperceptibly, trusting her. Amara drove the pen backward into Victor's wounded shoulder with every ounce of strength she had. Victor screamed. His grip loosened. Amara dropped and rolled. The gun went off. The bullet missed her head by inches and shattered the window behind them. Han fired. Victor went down. The emergency exit burst open and 4 more security team members poured through, weapons raised. It was over. Amara lay on the floor, her ears ringing, her whole body shaking with adrenaline. Hands grabbed her. Gentle, careful. Kael. He'd somehow gotten free of the zip ties, and now he was pulling her upright, his bound wrists bleeding, his face a mask of terror and relief. "Are you hurt?" His hands moved over her frantically, checking for wounds. "Did he shoot you? Are you—" "I'm fine." Amar's voice came out hoarse. "I'm okay." Kael pulled her against his chest and just held her, his whole body trembling. Around them, Han's team was securing the scene, calling for medical support, removing Voss's men. But Amara barely registered any of it. All she could feel was Kael's heartbeat hammering against her ear. All she could hear was his ragged breathing. All she could process was the fact that they had both almost died and somehow they were both still alive. "You came back," Kael whispered into her hair. "You came back for me." "Of course I did, you idiot." "I told Han to keep you safe, to keep you away from this. And I told Han I was done being kept anywhere." Amara pulled back enough to look at his face. Blood was still running from the cut above his eye. "We're partners or we're nothing, Kael. That means I don't hide while you fight alone." "You could have died." "So could you." Kael's expression crumpled. "I can't lose you. I can't— Oh, then stop trying to protect me by controlling me. Start trusting me to stand beside you instead of behind you." Kael stared at her. Then slowly, carefully, he cupped her face in his bleeding hands. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it. The surveillance, the lies, the fear. You were right about everything. I was so terrified of losing you that I suffocated you instead." "I know. Can you forgive me?" Amara looked into his exhausted, terrified, completely vulnerable eyes. "Ask me again when we're not covered in blood and standing in a crime scene." Despite everything, Kael laughed. The sound was broken and desperate and real. Then he kissed her. Not desperate like before, not possessive, just grateful. Like she was something precious he'd almost lost and somehow been given a second chance to keep. Around them, the chaos of the aftermath continued. But for just that moment, in the wreckage of Kael's glass fortress, they were simply 2 people who had almost lost everything and were trying to figure out how to build something real from the ruins. Han appeared beside them, phone in hand. "Seoul police are en route. We need statements from both of you." He looked at Victor being carried out on a stretcher, unconscious but stable. "Voss made a major mistake tonight. This gives us enough evidence to bring charges. Corporate espionage, attempted murder, extortion. He's done." "Where's Voss now?" Kael asked, his arms still wrapped protectively around Amara. "Unknown, but he won't stay hidden long. Not after this." Kael's expression went cold. "Find him. I don't care what it costs. Find Marcus Voss and make sure he understands what happens to people who threaten what's mine." "Kael," Amara started. "Not possession," Kael said quickly, looking down at her. "Protection. There's a difference. And I'm still learning where the line is. But Amara, Voss tried to kill you tonight. That's not something I can forgive or forget." "So what are you going to do?" Kael's smile was sharp and dangerous. The billionaire who controlled empires sliding back into place beneath the vulnerable man who had almost lost everything. "I'm going to destroy him," he said simply. "Legally, systematically, completely. By the time I'm done, Marcus Voss won't have the resources to threaten anyone ever again." "That's still control." "No." Kael's voice was steady. "That's consequence. He made a choice. Now he lives with the results." Amara studied his face. The man she had met 4 months ago would have said those exact words with cold detachment. But the man standing in front of her now was different. He was still ruthless, but he was ruthless because someone he loved had almost died. Not because he was trying to own her, because he was trying to protect a future where they could both be free. Okay, Amara said quietly. Kael's eyes widened. Okay? Destroy him. End the threat. But Kael... She put her hand on his chest, right over his hammering heart. After that's done, we need to talk, really talk, about what we are, what we're trying to build, and whether we can actually do this without destroying each other in the process. I know. Do you? Yes. Kael covered her hand with his. Because I almost lost you tonight. And I realize that all the control in the world means nothing if you're not standing beside me when the dust settles. Sirens were getting louder outside, red and blue lights flashing through the shattered windows. The real world was coming back, bringing police and questions and the messy aftermath of violence. But for just one more moment, Amara let herself stand in Kael's arms and believe that maybe, somehow, they could find a way through this. Together. Not as controller and controlled, not as possession and owner, but as two deeply flawed people who were learning what it meant to be equals in a world built on power and fear. The elevator chimed. Police poured onto the penthouse level, and the real work of rebuilding everything they'd broken began. The interrogation room smelled like stale coffee and fluorescent lighting. Amara sat across from Detective Park, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and the kind of patience that came from 20 years of watching people lie. A recording device sat on the metal table between them, red light blinking steadily. Walk me through it again, Detective Park said. From the beginning. Amara had already told the story twice. Once to the uniformed officers who had arrived first on scene, and once to Detective Park's partner. Now she was on round 3, her voice hoarse from talking and her hands wrapped around a paper cup of bad coffee that had long gone cold. I received a text from Ethan Mercer asking me to meet him at Hannam Bridge, Amara said mechanically. I knew it was a trap, so I contacted Kael's security team. We planned to use the meeting to gather evidence against Marcus Voss. And you didn't think to involve the police? I didn't think there was time. Voss's people had already been following me. I was afraid if we waited, someone would get hurt. Detective Park made a note. Tell me about the penthouse. When you arrived, what did you see? Amara closed her eyes. The images still burned into her retinas. Viktor Sokolov had Kael on his knees, hands tied, bleeding, 3 other men with weapons. They were demanding access to Kael's financial network. And then? Han and his team came through the mechanical room. There was gunfire. Viktor grabbed me, used me as a shield. He was going to take both of us. But you fought back. Amara opened her eyes and looked at the detective. I stabbed him with a pen. It was all I had. Detective Park's expression didn't change, but something that might have been approval flickered in her eyes. That took courage. It took desperation. Sometimes they're the same thing. Detective Park closed her notebook. Miss Vale, I've been doing this job long enough to know when someone is telling the truth. Your story matches Kael Jin's statement, matches the security team's account, and matches the physical evidence. You're not in any trouble here. What about Voss? We have warrants out for Marcus Voss and Ethan Mercer. Viktor Sokolov is in custody at Seoul Medical Center under armed guard. The other 3 men are in processing. Detective Park leaned forward slightly. But I need you to understand something. Men like Marcus Voss don't go down easy. He has resources, lawyers, connections. Even with everything we have, building a case that sticks is going to take time. How much time? Months. Maybe longer. The detective's expression was sympathetic. I know that's not what you want to hear, but the system moves slowly, especially when we're talking about international corporate crime. Amara felt exhaustion settling into her bones. What am I supposed to do in the meantime? Just wait and hope he doesn't send someone else? You stay smart, you stay careful, and you let Kael Jin's security team do their job. Detective Park stood up. You're free to go. We'll be in touch if we have follow-up questions. Amara walked out of the interrogation room into the hallway of the Seoul Police Headquarters. Dawn was breaking outside the windows, pale gray light washing over a city that was just starting to wake up. Kael was waiting on the bench outside, still wearing his blood-stained shirt from the night before. Someone had cleaned and bandaged the cut above his eye, but he looked like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw Amara, he stood immediately. Are you okay? He asked. They're not charging me with anything, if that's what you mean. That's not what I mean. Amara looked at him. Really looked at him. The exhaustion carved into his face, the fear still lingering in his eyes, the way his hands were clenched at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. I don't know if I'm okay, she admitted quietly. I don't know what I am right now. Do you want to get out of here? Where would we go? Anywhere. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can actually talk without police or security teams or corporate assassins interrupting. Despite everything, Amara almost smiled. That sounds impossible. Probably. Kael's expression was serious. But I'd like to try anyway. They ended up at a 24-hour cafe in Itaewon, tucked into a corner booth where they could see the door and most of the room. Old habits from a life spent looking over shoulders. Kael ordered tea. Amara ordered coffee strong enough to strip paint. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Outside the window, Seoul was waking up. Street vendors setting up breakfast carts. Early commuters rushing toward subway stations. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that less than 6 hours ago, a corporate war had reached its bloody conclusion in a glass tower overlooking their city. I'm pulling out of the Singapore deal, see, Kael said finally. Amara looked up from her coffee. What? The acquisition that started all of this. The one Voss was trying to sabotage. I'm withdrawing my bid. Kael's voice was steady but tired. It's not worth it. None of it is worth what almost happened to you. Kael, that deal is worth billions. I don't care. Yes, you do. Your entire empire is built on caring about deals like that. My empire almost got you killed. Kael's hands tightened around his teacup. I've spent my entire adult life building something I thought was untouchable. And last night I watched it all become completely meaningless when Victor put a gun to your head. Amara was quiet for a moment. So what are you saying? You're just going to walk away from everything you've built? No. I'm saying I'm going to rebuild it differently, smaller, more controlled, less vulnerable to people like Voss who see every relationship as leverage and every person as a potential weapon. That sounds like you're retreating back into your fortress. Maybe I am. Kael finally met her eyes. But this time I'm hoping you'll be in there with me, not as my employee or my prisoner, just as someone who understands why the walls exist. Amara took a sip of her coffee, letting the bitter heat ground her. I can't be with someone who treats me like I need protecting from the world. I know. And I can't live in a relationship where I'm constantly fighting to prove I'm an equal instead of a possession. I know that too. So where does that leave us? Kael set down his tea and leaned back against the booth. He looked older in the dawn light, worn down, human in a way he had never let himself be before. It leaves us at a choice, he said quietly. We can walk away from each other right now, clean break. You go build a life that doesn't involve corporate wars and surveillance and men with guns. I go back to my empire and pretend I never learned what it felt like to need someone more than power. Or we try. Really try. Not the broken version we've been doing for 4 months, but something honest. Where I tell you the truth even when it means admitting I'm terrified. Where you trust me enough to let me protect you without thinking it means I'm trying to control you. Where we both accept that we're never going to be normal, but maybe we can be real. Amara felt tears burning behind her eyes. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's probably impossible. Kael's voice was rough with emotion. But Amara, I stood in that penthouse last night and watched you risk your life to save mine. And I realized something. I don't want an empire if you're not in it. I don't want power if it means losing you. I just want a chance to build something that isn't built on fear. What would that even look like? I don't know. But I want to find out. With you. Amara stared at him across the scarred table in a cheap cafe while the sun came up over Seoul. This man who had controlled her, protected her, suffocated her, trusted her, and almost died for her in the space of 4 chaotic months. She should walk away. Every rational part of her brain was screaming that this was toxic, that people didn't change, that Kael Jin would always choose control over vulnerability. But when she looked into his exhausted eyes, she didn't see the terrifying billionaire who had treated her like furniture. She saw someone who was just as broken and scared as she was, and maybe that was enough to start with. Okay. Amara said quietly. Kael's breath caught. Okay? Okay, we try. But Kael, I need you to hear me. Really hear me. She leaned forward. The second you start building walls again, the second you choose surveillance over trust, the second you make me feel invisible because it's easier than being vulnerable, I'm gone. No second chances. No explanations. Just gone. I understand. Do you? Because you've said that before and then I found surveillance photos in your desk drawer. Kael flinched. You're right, and I don't have a good defense for that except to say I'm learning, slowly, badly, but I'm trying. Trying isn't enough. Then what is? Amara reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers were cold and trembling slightly. Honesty, she said. Even when it's hard. Even when it makes you vulnerable. You tell me when you're scared instead of trying to control the situation. You ask me what I need instead of deciding for me. And you trust that I'm strong enough to stand beside you instead of always trying to put me behind you. Kael's grip tightened on her hand. What if I fail? Then we figure it out together. But you have to actually let me in, Kael. All the way in. Not just to the parts of your life you think are safe. To the scared, messy, broken parts, too. I don't know if I know how to do that. Neither do I. Amara smiled sadly. But maybe that's the point. We're both damaged. We're both learning. Maybe that's what makes us work. They sat in silence for a while, hands clasped across the table, while the cafe filled up with morning customers and the world continued turning around them. I'm going to take a few weeks off, Kael said eventually, from work, from the empire, from all of it. Christine can handle the day-to-day operations. I need time to actually process what happened. And I need time with you that isn't measured in stolen moments between crisis management. Amara raised her eyebrows. Kael Jin taking time off work. That might actually cause the stock market to crash. Let it crash. I'm tired of living my entire life in service to something that almost cost me everything that matters. What would you even do with free time? I have no idea. Kael's smile was crooked and real. Maybe you could teach me. I don't know either. I've spent the last 4 months either working for you or running from you. I'm not sure I remember what normal life looks like. Then we'll figure it out together. Amara studied his face, searching for the manipulation, the angle, the way he was trying to control the narrative. But all she saw was genuine exhaustion and hope. Okay, she said again. We take time, we figure things out, we learn how to be people instead of just survivors. Kael brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. Thank you. For what? For not giving up on me. For coming back when you had every reason to run. For being brave enough to stab a trained operative with a pen because you weren't going to wait to be rescued. Despite everything, Amara laughed. The sound was broken and tired, but real. That was pretty stupid of me, she admitted. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. They finished their coffee and tea as the cafe filled with the morning rush. Eventually, they would have to deal with police statements and insurance claims and the legal nightmare of dismantling Marcus Voss's operation. Eventually, they would have to figure out what their relationship actually looked like when it wasn't built on crisis and adrenaline. But for now, they just sat together in a corner booth and watched Seoul wake up through the window. Two broken people trying to figure out how to build something real from the wreckage of everything they'd destroyed. 3 weeks later, Marcus Voss was arrested in Singapore trying to board a private flight to Switzerland. The news broke on every major financial channel simultaneously. Footage of Voss being led through the airport in handcuffs, his expensive suit rumpled, his face carefully blank. Amara watched it from Kael's penthouse, which had been completely renovated after the attack. New windows, new furniture, new security system with manual overrides that Amara herself controlled. They're saying he'll fight extradition, Amara said, watching the screen. Kael looked up from his laptop, where he was reviewing something that wasn't work for the first time in his adult life. He can fight all he wants. Han's team gathered enough evidence to bury him 10 times over. Corporate espionage, attempted murder, international conspiracy, he's done. What about Ethan? Still in the wind, but Interpol has his photo flagged at every border crossing in 50 countries. Kael's expression was grim. He'll surface eventually. They always do. Amara turned off the television. Does it feel like closure? No, it feels like the end of one chapter and the beginning of a much more complicated one. Kael closed his laptop and looked at her. "How are you feeling?" It was a question he asked now, multiple times a day. Not as a formality, but as genuine curiosity about her internal state. 3 weeks of learning to communicate instead of control. 3 weeks of therapy sessions, both individual and couples, where they were slowly unpacking decades of trauma and toxic patterns. 3 weeks of actually talking to each other like equals instead of like employer and employee. It was messy and hard, and sometimes Amara wanted to scream with frustration. But it was also real in a way nothing between them had ever been before. "I feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop," Amara admitted. "Like this can't actually last. Like eventually you'll go back to being the man who had me followed for 4 months, and I'll go back to being the woman who was desperate enough to accept it." Kael stood up and walked over to where she was standing by the new windows. "I think about that too. About falling back into old patterns. About the day you finally realize I'm too broken to fix, and you walk out that door for good. So what do we do about it? We stay honest. We keep working. We give each other permission to fail as long as we're trying." Kael took her hand gently, "And we remember that loving someone doesn't mean owning them. It means trusting them enough to let them be free." Amara looked up at him. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just terrified of losing you again, and fear is a hell of a motivator for change." She laughed despite herself. "That's the most Kael Jin answer possible. I'm still me, Amara. I'm just trying to be a better version of me." "I know." She squeezed his hand. "And I'm still the woman who burned your midnight porridge because I was tired of being invisible. We're both works in progress." Works in progress together. Amara leaned against him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear. 3 weeks ago, she had been lying on the floor of this penthouse with a gun to her head. Now she was standing in the same space, rebuilt and renovated, trying to build something that looked like a future. "I got a job offer," she said quietly. She felt Kael tense slightly. "Where?" "A restaurant in Gangnam, head chef position. Good pay, creative freedom, no corporate drama." "Are you taking it?" Amara pulled back to look at him. "Do you want me to?" "I want you to do whatever makes you happy." "That's not an answer." Kael was quiet for a moment. She could see him choosing his words carefully, learning to communicate instead of control. "Honestly," he said finally, "part of me wants you to stay here. Keep cooking in this kitchen. Stay in this space where I know you're safe. But that's the old part of me, the part that thinks love means keeping you in a glass box where nothing can hurt you." "And the new part?" "The new part knows that you need your own life, your own career, your own identity outside of being Kael Jin's partner." He cupped her face gently. "So yes, take the job. Build something that's yours. I'll be here when you come home." Amara felt tears burning behind her eyes. "You really mean that?" "I'm trying to mean it. Ask me again in 6 months when the panic attacks hit, because I can't monitor your location every second of the day." "You're going to have panic attacks?" "Probably. My therapist says it's part of the process of learning to trust." Kael smiled ruefully. "Turns out decades of control issues don't disappear overnight. Who knew?" Amara laughed and cried at the same time. "We're a mess. We really are. But we're trying. We really are." She kissed him then, slow and deep and honest. Not desperate like their first kiss, not possessive like the ones that followed, just present, just real. When they pulled apart, Kael rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said quietly. "Not because you complete me or fix me or any of that romantic nonsense, but because you make me want to be better than I am. And that's terrifying and exhausting and the best thing that's ever happened to me." "I love you too," Amara whispered. "Even though you're controlling and paranoid and emotionally constipated." "Emotionally constipated?" "My therapist's words, not mine." Kael laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was warm and genuine and still rare enough that Amara treasured it every time. They stood together in the renovated penthouse while the sun set over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Outside, the city stretched endlessly in all directions. Millions of lives, millions of stories, millions of people trying to figure out how to love each other without destroying each other in the process. Amara had spent 4 months being invisible in this space, then weeks being terrified of it. Now she was learning to make it home. Not because it was a cage or a fortress or a symbol of Kael's empire, but because it was the place where two broken people were learning to build something real. 6 months later, Amara stood in the kitchen of her new restaurant, watching her sous chef plate the final dish of the night. It was a small place, only 30 seats, but it was hers. Her menu, her vision, her name on the sign outside. Maya sat at the bar, nursing a glass of wine and providing running commentary on the customers. "Table 4 wants to know if you're single," Maya called out. "I told them you're taken by a terrifying billionaire who probably has them under surveillance as we speak." Amara rolled her eyes. "You're going to get me in trouble." "Please, Kael adores me. I'm the only person who's not afraid of him." "That's because you're insane. I prefer courageously honest." The kitchen door opened and Kael walked in, still wearing his suit from whatever business meeting he'd been in all afternoon. His tie was loosened and he looked tired, but he smiled when he saw Amara. "How was service?" he asked. "Busy. Good. We had a food critic from Seoul magazine in tonight." "I know. I saw the reservation." Amara raised an eyebrow. "You're not supposed to be monitoring my reservation system." "I'm not monitoring. I'm just casually aware. That's literally the definition of monitoring." "Fine, I'm monitoring, but only because I care about your success, not because I'm trying to control anything." "Uh-huh." Kael moved closer, slipping his arms around her waist from behind. "How much longer until you're done here?" "Another hour. Clean up and prep for tomorrow." "Want help?" Amara turned in his arms. "The terrifying billionaire wants to help with restaurant cleanup?" "The terrifying billionaire wants to spend time with the woman he loves. If that happens to involve scrubbing pots, so be it." From the bar, Maya made exaggerated gagging sounds. "You two are disgusting. I'm leaving before I develop diabetes from all this sweetness." She grabbed her coat and waved on her way out. Amara and Kael were left alone in the kitchen. "She's not wrong," Amara said. "We have gotten kind of disgustingly domestic." "Is that a bad thing?" "No, it's just different." Amara started breaking down her station, and Kael moved to help without being asked. 6 months ago, if someone had told me we'd end up here, you washing dishes in my restaurant, me living in your penthouse, both of us in therapy and actually communicating like adults, I would have laughed in their face. 6 months ago, we were both convinced we were too broken to be fixed. Maybe we are broken. Maybe we always will be. Probably. Kael handed her a clean pan. But at least we're broken together. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that came from actually knowing someone instead of just existing in their space. Eventually, the kitchen was clean and the prep was done for tomorrow. They walked out into the cool Seoul night, hand in hand. "Want to get late-night porridge?" Kael asked. Amara laughed. "I thought you hated porridge after I burned that batch." "I never hated it. I just didn't appreciate it properly." He squeezed her hand. "Kind of like how I didn't appreciate you properly until you threatened to leave." "You're getting sentimental in your old age." "I'm 36. That's not old." "It is when you act like you're 60. Rude." They bickered good-naturedly all the way to a 24-hour restaurant that served the best juke in Gangnam. The same place they'd ended up the morning after the attack, when they'd first tried to figure out what they were to each other. Now, 6 months later, they were still figuring it out. But at least they were figuring it out together. They ordered porridge and tea and sat in their usual corner booth. "Marcus Voss was sentenced today," Kael said quietly. 15 years. No possibility of parole for the first 8. Amara set down her spoon. "How do you feel about that?" Relieved, vindicated, empty. Kael stared at his tea. "I spent months planning his destruction, and now that it's done, all I feel is tired." "That's normal. Revenge doesn't actually feel as good as we think it will." "When did you get so wise?" Amara smiled. "I have a very expensive therapist who tells me things." "Mine too." They ate in silence for a while. "Ethan Mercer was arrested in Bangkok," Kael said eventually. "Trying to run another con on a tech executive. Han's team coordinated with Thai authorities to extradite him back to Seoul." "Good. You don't sound surprised." "I'm not. People like Ethan don't change. They just find new targets." Amara took a sip of tea. At least he'll be held accountable for what he did. Does it bother you, knowing he was lying the entire time? It did. For a while. But then I realized something. She looked up at Kael. He showed me what I didn't want. Someone charming and easy and completely hollow. And that made me realize what I did want. Someone difficult and complicated and real. I'm difficult and complicated? Kael, you're the definition of difficult and complicated. Fair. Amara reached across the table and took his hand. But you're also honest now. You're trying now. And that means more than easy charm ever could. Kael's grip tightened on her hand. I'm still terrified I'm going to mess this up. You probably will. And I'll probably mess it up too. But as long as we keep talking, keep trying, keep choosing each other, even when it's hard, maybe that's enough. Maybe. They finished their porridge and walked back to Shinra Tower through the quiet streets. The penthouse was dark and peaceful when they arrived. Amara had finally added her own touches to the space. Plants in the windows, books on the shelves, photos on the walls. Evidence that someone actually lived here instead of just existing. They got ready for bed in comfortable routine. Kael on his side of the bathroom, Amara on hers. No longer fighting for space, but sharing it. In bed, Amara curled against Kael's side, her head on his chest, his arm wrapped around her shoulders. I'm glad you stayed, Kael said quietly into the darkness. I'm glad you let me go long enough to choose to come back. Best decision I ever made, even though it nearly killed me. Amara smiled. You're so dramatic. You love it. I really do. They fell asleep like that, two broken people who had learned to fit their jagged edges together. Outside, Seoul hummed with midnight life. The city that had watched them meet, fight, break apart, and slowly rebuild into something that looked like love. Not perfect love, not easy love, but real love. The kind built on truth instead of control, on trust instead of surveillance, on choosing each other every day, even when it would be easier to walk away. In the morning, Amara would wake up and go to her restaurant. Kael would wake up and go to his office, where he was slowly learning to build an empire that didn't require suffocating everyone around him. They would text throughout the day. Small things, meaningless things. The kind of ordinary communication that meant everything because it was built on genuine connection instead of obligation. And at night, they would come home to each other, to the glass fortress that was no longer a prison, to the space they were learning to share as equals instead of as controller and controlled, to the life they were building together, one honest conversation at a time. It wasn't the fairy tale ending where love fixed everything. It was better. It was real. And for two people who had spent their entire lives hiding behind walls, reality was the most radical choice they could make. So they made it, every day, together. In a penthouse overlooking Seoul, where the rain still hammered against floor-to-ceiling windows and the city sprawled endlessly below, Kael Jin and Amara Vale learned the hardest lesson of all. Love wasn't about ownership. It wasn't about control. It wasn't about building cages, no matter how beautiful, to keep someone safe. Love was about being seen, really, truly, completely seen, and trusting that being seen wouldn't destroy you. It was terrifying. It was exhausting. It was the bravest thing either of them had ever done, and it was worth every broken piece they'd had to rebuild to get there. The glass fortress still stood, but now it had windows that opened, doors that unlocked from the inside, and two people who finally understood that the strongest empires weren't built on fear and control. They were built on trust, on vulnerability, on the radical belief that love was something you chose, not something you captured and kept. And in that belief, Kael and Amara found something neither of them had known they were searching for. Freedom. Not from each other, but with each other, finally, completely. Real.